Welcome to the Talent Report Plus Thrive podcast, where we dive deep into the ever-evolving topic of talent with insights from MRA members. I'm your host, Jim Morgan, Vice President of Workforce Strategies at MRA, and I'm thrilled to guide you through these conversations with our MRA members who are industry experts, thought leaders, and passionate professionals at the forefront of talent development. Good afternoon and welcome to the September edition of the Talent Report. I'm Jim Morgan, Vice President of Workforce Strategies at MRA, and it's my pleasure to join you. We'll be all things compensation today as we prepare for our compensation conference in about a week, but give you a little bit of a sneak preview on some of the things that you're going to see coming up soon. It's now my pleasure to introduce John Komosa. I have known John for many years, more than either one of us probably want to talk about, going all the way back to his QTI days. QTI is an HR consulting firm in Madison, then was at Alliant Energy for quite some time. And John's been real active in SHRM, both as a former director of it. I know he's been very active with the student groups. And now he works at Generac and is the director of global compensation. John, thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to give you the first few minutes to sort of do the introductions and things like that, and then we'll get into some questions and answers. So John, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to your membership. So again, thank you for, as Jim mentioned, I'm the Director of Global Compensation at Generac. I've been with the organization going on 2 years now. Prior to that, I was with Alliant Energy and then worked in various consulting opportunities at a couple different companies. Heavily involved with SHRM, which is a HR association, very active within the state itself as well as at a national level. So from a compensation perspective, the market is a great influencer to us. The economy, what's happening in the different cultures, different countries will influence us. Changes within the industry has been extremely important. As grid reliability at times has been challenged by certain events, whether it's storm related or other natural of occurring events such as fires, it's really impacted kind of the products we've delivered, how we've delivered them, and then our stakeholders. We are publicly traded, so we have an investor group that we share our progress with. They provide feedback to us as to where they would like to see our focus to be, and so they're a really important part of how we view compensation. And when we talk about compensation, I'm really specifically going to talk about the base salary and the incentives, but benefits are a big part of that total rewards package. It's something we can't discount. It means different things to different people, especially where you are generationally. So if I'm closer to retirement, I'm going to have a lot more emphasis on my retirement strategies versus whether I'm going to worry about childcare. And so it's important to understand where your employees are coming from as you're delivering benefits, but also as you're delivering compensation, because compensation goes hand in hand with that. Do you provide the right tools at the right time for the individuals to be flexible and responsive to their needs? We use it as a tool to attract and retain. That's no different than anybody else. We're all trying to find the right candidate pool, the right talent to come join our organization, and pay becomes a way to help seal that real relationship. It's covers kind of the basics, but it's also ways people develop their own comfort and security. So we try to right size our pay components. And that's when we talk about how we align to the market, that's an element that comes into play. Is the pay right sized and are the pay components right sized? As we have, because of our global footprint, it's really important that we streamline our delivery. And although we have a very large HR team, with 8,000 employees, our comp team is on the relatively small size. And so you want to make sure you're efficient with that delivery, that you're using the right tools, that you can do it in a cost-effective manner, and that the salary and incentives that you're paying are affordable for you as a business. We've started to increase our leader and employee transparency and understanding engagement. That's a big influence as to how we deliver pay in the elements that we're going to put out there. And then market alignment. We talk about market alignment, but our market alignment really differs by our industry, by the job groups we're talking about, and by the country that we're in. So certain countries are very regulated in terms of how pay is delivered. And so as we work with our teammates in Italy, they have much more more stringent kind of base level pay guidance, and you have to take that into consideration. If you're working within a country where benefits are delivered through the country itself, benefits isn't the big driver there. Now pay becomes a differentiator more so than the benefit side of it. So it's understanding what is each country has available to offer and what's important to your employees in that. And going back to the market alignment, because we're in a lot of different industries, we treat each industry a little bit differently. So as we go out to surveys and review surveys, how we align ourselves to those surveys into the market will vary. So right now, our biggest challenge is in our engineering space and our technology jobs. It's a very hot marketplace, as Jim mentioned. As labor is starting to retire, that we don't quite have enough engineers to fill all those jobs that are out there, as well as a lot of other jobs. But our job market, our demand continues to grow, even though the labor market continues to tighten. So we've taken a much more aggressive strategy in some areas of our business and within some jobs than we might have with other jobs. That doesn't mean we're not competitive in those markets, but we want to make sure we're cognizant of what's happening at each of those different levels.
John, when you're trying to figure out all of that, one of the questions just was, what's the benchmark data that you're using? You're across several continents, you're in a whole bunch of different industries, you got a whole bunch of different positions. What are the reports that you look at that you trust, or just say, hey, this is how we're going to set some of this?
So we use a lot of different survey sources. So we use some primary very large vendors that provide national data across a bunch of different countries. We tailor that data for that country. So if someone's asking me about how do we pay in Mexico or how do we pay in Canada, it's about the pay in Canada or Mexico. It's not about the currency exchange rate and how pay in Wisconsin translates to pay in Mexico, because it doesn't translate well. It doesn't work. We often get that question with our Canadian employees because there's a lot of similarities, but because you have more of a national healthcare approach, what compensation means there is very different what the regulations mean. So we develop compensation at a country-specific level using a lot of survey sources. I try to find 3 to 4 that I'm really comfortable with across any job. And then for certain jobs, especially as we get into skilled trades, then that might be a different set of surveys. Not all surveys are equal. And it's important to use resources that are available, such as with MRA. We'll do the sales pitch for MRA here, where they have a good handle on the manufacturing industry that we are in. It's really important to find surveys that align to your needs, and they'll differ. And then we use tools to manage all those different survey sources. So we participate right now probably in 30 to 40 surveys that we're heavily involved in. And then we use what I would call a survey aggregator, something that takes all that information, allows us to filter through it fairly quickly and develop benchmarks. And what's interesting about those tools is AI is becoming a much bigger part of those tools. And so it helps to streamline that pay matching. It helps to look for more consistency. It gives you suggestions as to how you might want to look at other jobs that you might not seen before. So those are good resources. That's what I'd recommend. If you're not at the point where you're able to, spend a lot of money on a lot of surveys, then there's consultants that you can work with that can help you understand those markets from their perspective and from what they've seen. So consultants become a good resource. You've got a couple that you trust. Is that just over time in history, you just figured out which are the ones that fit what you're doing the best? Yes, and they've actually varied by the company I've been at. So depending upon, the last place I was at, I would say we used a different set of consultants because their focus was different. They had a high concentration within the utility space, and so they were great resources specifically to the utility space. As we broadened with the move, as I moved to Generac, and we broadened kind of the markets we're in, we've had to broaden the types of consultants and partnerships that we've developed, because we need opinions that with people who have experience in those areas. And when I say consultants, really I'm talking about survey providers for the most part. We do have specific consultants we work with at executive levels or at the benefits level. And again, it's best to match with what our needs are at that moment. And we're also willing to make changes where needed. So if we are uncomfortable with a certain relationship, we're more than happy, to talk through it. And if it doesn't change, then to move on to the next relationship that better serves us. I'm going to jump over to the next slide, which is about the toolbox and kind of how I organize myself when I think about compensation. To me, it always starts with the philosophy. What's that high level direction that you as an organization can agree to? And not only that, we can agree to as an HR team, but we can agree to with our business groups. One thing about Generac is we've grown tremendously through a lot of acquisition over the last 5 years. And so we've more than doubled in size primarily through that. And so when you do that, you now have a whole bunch of cultures, a bunch of different ways that people operate, a bunch of different ways leaders see how the business should work. And it's how you integrate that. And these philosophies help us understand each other in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and where priorities lie. And this is where we've probably made some changes in our approach just because of the feedback we've gotten from our senior leadership team and how they would like us to see approach compensation for the challenges that they're facing. We've applied that to an operating model. And so this is our way to provide some consistent delivery or centralized delivery across the globe. But really, we've taken it with a regional focus. So we know when we go to Latin America or EMEA or APAC, that there's going to be different things that we'll need to do in those areas. And so we want to make sure we're tailoring it to the needs of the business. So for example, as we work with some of our groups in other countries, they may not be as mature from a management perspective, because we've acquired a relatively younger company or smaller company, and so it's now bringing them into this larger entity of Generac. And how do we create formality in their approach? It's not so much now that the owner wants to do something a certain way, but now what's the business reason behind it? And so the centralized delivery, but really a regional focus helps us to do that without having to do it at a 22 country level. And so we really focus on regions. What are some of the commonalities there? And what's enabled us to do that are really two things. One is we've implemented what I call, many people call, a job architecture or career framework, and HR technology. Those are really the two primary tools that have allowed us to deliver this way. We went live with a new HR technology workday in the middle of this year. And that was the first time we've now had an HR tool that all employees have access to, that all managers have access to, and all HR leaders have access to. So there's a central repository, a central source of truth as to how we manage our compensation. And it's given our managers greater ability to make pay decisions because the pay information is now in front of them, where it wasn't before. Before it was us presenting a lot of reports, doing a lot of back-end data analysis and conversation. But this really enables them to make these decisions. And what a job architecture has allowed us to do is because we've had all these job titles and growth through acquisition, is we had all these different. We had probably 3,600 titles for 8,000 employees that we've now whittled down to about 1,900. And architecture helps us understand what the career levels or streams of a job are. So executive, managers, individual contributors, and how they relate to each other. What's the level of value that we're going to place on them, whether it's entry level or expert or principal kind of level individual contributors. We apply that to then the job titles that they're using, so that we know as we go globally, we can say, okay, this job in the engineering space is a senior level job, regardless of what it's titled. And we can now truly do comparisons across people. It creates opportunities for career growth as well, and so that employees can see what the next step in their career opportunities within a job family. So again, if I'm an entry level engineer, I can see the next step I might want to take, or if I want to get into a different part of the business, it helps me see maybe where my next opportunities there are. And so that architecture and framework we introduced in 2019 and are still rolling it out. So it's something that. Sorry, not 2019, 2020 is when we rolled it out, but it's something we're still rolling out. It's an ongoing education process. And a big part of this, and I just jump to the bottom on this, is that training for managers, because we talk about this as HR team members, we talk about this as compensation. It's all natural to us from those spaces. But when you then present this to leaders who have never heard this terminology before or have had different experiences, we've realized we need to spend a lot more time training not only our managers, but also our HR team members. So we're all speaking the same language and speaking this from the same perspective. And so we've been piloting supervisory or manager level training sessions on compensation with large groups. It's something we'll be rolling out towards the end of this year when we do our year-end office cycle planning. And we've rolled those out as very large trainings in the past. We're going to break those out into much smaller targeted trainings so that we can have active conversations around the decisions that they're running into, especially when they're trying to decide how to apply merit dollars or want to promote somebody in specific situations. It's tough to do when you're in an audience of 300 people. It's a much easier conversation if you can get those down into, less than 100 or 50 is probably a better target size. And so that's been really important. But leading up to that, we realized we also needed to train our HR team. Our HR team is large. It's very dispersed throughout the country. Again, people coming with different experiences. And so we built into our onboarding of HR team members, we actually have sessions just on compensation. We talk about all these things that we're talking about today in a lot more depth, so that when they start, they have some perspective as to how we go about it. And then we have regular check-ins. Every week we have an overall HR and COE check-in at the leader level, just to see what team members might be hearing or seeing that we need to respond to. And then if we need to, we'll do additional targeted training as those things have come up. And then we have a very active learning and development and training team that's created other training opportunities, really from a corporate perspective, things around corporate responsibility, things about just working within the business itself, kind of your compliance-oriented training, safety, patents, being part of a global company. And it's something that we require all of our employees to go through. They track it, manage it, and they do a lot of specialized trainings from there. Next topic I always want to touch on is I think there's the other frame of reference that I bring in is the pay structures. So as you develop philosophy and have this model, we've created this architecture. We use pay structures really for two reasons. It's a way to help organize pay across these levels of job architecture, as well as to help us be a budgetary tool. So as our finance teams has some perspective as to what we think we might pay if we put people into all these jobs, what's the potential for pay, and sets some boundaries as to what we're willing to pay. It's got a bottom end we feel is what we think is the minimum level we'd want to pay for a job, and then we have top end levels of pay. Because we're in multi-states, different states have different rules about pay transparency, and these pay structures have allowed us to be more consistent in how we communicate pay and how we communicate pay at those state levels. So as job postings are going up in states where pay needs to be disclosed, is something that we have set up, and these pay structures help us to deliver that. When I say we have multiple pay structures, is that one structure? We tried one structure to see if it would fit for everybody. It really doesn't. And so we have a structure just for our manufacturing teams, and they actually vary by plant. Each plant has a different level of need, and so we vary our structures within the plants themselves based upon the types of products that they're putting out. We have 5 plants in the U.S., all with very similar but a little bit different structures. At the office level, so really our professional staff, people not working in the manufacturing facilities themselves, has their own structures, and we're considering even splitting that so that we look at certain industries maybe a little bit differently and take a different pay position. We focus our structures in the country. So what we have tried to do in the U.S. isn't necessarily what we're going to do in Canada, Italy, the U.K. It is unique to those countries. It has some similarities so that we can still compare jobs across a lot of different things, but it's not necessarily, we're not trying to, again, treat everybody the same way. And then lastly, we realized in Canada and the US, we had a need to apply geographic differentials. So we have a lot of people, we actually have offices out on the West Coast and on the East Coast and around New York City. And so what we are willing to pay in Waukesha, we would never get someone to work for, say, in San Francisco or in New York. And so we have geographic differentials we apply so that they're still paid within the same grade, but those grades have modifiers added to them to help adjust for that geographic differential, of which are then based upon what we think is the cost of labor in those areas. I saw a question come up, and is that something, Jimmy, you wanted to relay?
Yeah, I think there's one here just on the whole pay structure, the communications process for doing that, whatever your philosophy might be, any recommendations you've got that say, boy, if we're going to get everybody on the same page, these are the couple of things that I would definitely do.
I would start and primarily focus on philosophy and architecture. What are you trying to accomplish to show at a very high level? If you get too much into the weeds, managers, first of all, aren't probably all that interested in it. And it gets just into too much detail as to what it gets in the way of what their jobs really are, which is to help make decisions. So when we talk about pay, we talk about a pay range as being what we're willing to pay, whether it's from top to bottom. And there's no one good spot in that pay structure. There's lots of reasons people are in different parts of the pay structure, but it's important that they are in that range. We try to avoid bringing people in below structure, because once somebody comes into the organization, they'll realize they are below, and then they'll become immediately unhappy after they've just joined your organization. So it's really important that we keep people within structure. That offers us some then consistency, especially as we're looking at pay equity and affirmative action planning, that we can speak to why someone's in a certain position in that structure. And then we provide guidance. So we've tailored leader training around what the concept of the pay ranges are. They can see it for their employees. They can see it adjusted for the geographic differentials that their employees are sitting in. And we help them understand that when someone's low or someone's high, here's the types of decisions they should be thinking about. So we do that through guidance documents. We're not prescriptive. We don't say that if you're at the middle of the range or at the bottom part of the range, you have to give these types of increases. We make suggestions that if you're in these situations, consider paying more or less based upon those situations on a percentage basis.
Well, got like 2 minutes left here, John, so I'm going to wrap it up. Really appreciate what you've got. Appreciate your spending the time with us and providing the logic and philosophy and everything else behind what you've done at Generac and before that. So thanks for being with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up, we've got a few things for you of interest, I hope. We've got talking about DEI next month with Freidert and Andres Gonzalez. We've got a look at 2025, looking both economically and at HR trends in November with Jeff Badzine from BMO. And we'll finish out the year with Navient and Tricia Shields talking about HR and technology, AI, HIRSs, optimization, and things like that. So hope you can join us for all of those as well. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Report Plus Thrive podcast. Stay connected for more exclusive insights directly from our MRA members. Check out the show notes for valuable resources on today's topics. If you have questions or want to learn more about MRA, find my contact information in the show notes or check out www.mranet.org.